Property binding allows us to set a property of an element to the value of a template expression. Here we bind the source property of the image element to the image URL property of the product, effectively defining the source of the image from information in our component class. Our binding target is always enclosed in square brackets to the left of the equals and identifies a property of the element. The binding source is always enclosed in quotes to the right of the equals and specifies the template expression. For comparison, here is a similar binding using interpolation. Note that in this case, the element property is not enclosed in square brackets, and the template expression is enclosed in curly braces with no quotes. Like interpolation, property binding is one way from the source class property to the target element property. It effectively allows us to control our template's DOM from our component class. When we can use property binding or interpolation to achieve the same result, which one is better? The general guideline is to prefer property binding over interpolation. However, if you need to include the template expression as part of a larger expression, such as this example, you may need to use interpolation. Now let's add some property binding to our sample application. Here we are back in the editor, looking at the product list component and its associated template. Let's use property binding to bind the source of our product image. We use an image element to display our product image, and we'll use property binding to bind the image's source or SRC property. So we enclose the SRC in square brackets. On the right side of the equals, we define the template expression in quotes. We want to bind to the product's image URL property from the product list component class. Let's also use property binding to bind the title property of the image to the product's name. Let's check out the result in the browser. Whoa, they're big, but we do see images. If we hover over an image, we see the image title. But this image is rather large for display in our table. Let's use property binding to set some style properties. Let's add properties for the image width and image margin to our component class. The image width is a number, so we specify its type with a colon and then number. Let's set it to 50. The image margin is also a number, and we'll set it to 2. Back in the template, we use property binding to bind the image styles. We want to bind the style property width in pixels. We'll bind that to the image width property from the component class. Notice that we don't prefix this property with product, because image width is a property of the component class, not the product object. And we do the same with the style margin in pixels, and set that to the image margin class property. So now we've seen how to use property binding to bind several properties of the image element to properties of the component's class. Looking again at the browser, that looks much better. But our images are always displayed. The Show Image button doesn't work yet. To hook up the button, we need to respond to user events. Let's do that next.